Hello, and welcome back to Abby's podcast, Her Anatomy. I have with us today guest speaker Joyce Snyder. So I am familiar with this person because she happens to be my mother, and she's going to be talking with us today about her. Let me not start off with that one. Her children that she's had, how many children she's had, along with how many miscarriages that she's had. But before we get into that, I want everybody to hear how my mom grew up and what happened when she met my dad and how she met my dad. So let's start with that. Hello, Mom.
That's a lot.
I told you. Um, so
Okay.
tell me, don't worry, I'll keep this brief.
Okay.
Okay. So try to think about key points. So tell us, first of all, where you grew up. Where were you born?
I grew up southeast of Greensboro in the country. My dad was a bus driver, but he farmed for us to have food. And so we had cows and all kinds of crops and different kinds of animals as well, but just for our family. And I grew up on a farm and
Okay.
I'm grateful for that. I think it taught me hard work and that I never ever wanted to grow up on a farm
And eat.
and yeah, raise my own food. But it sure was natural and wonderful, but it's a
Nice.
lot of work.
How many people grew up with you? How many brothers and sisters
So
do you
I
have?
had two brothers and two sisters, and so large family and
Y'all shared a lot of stuff.
shared a lot of stuff. I was the baby of five,
Hmm.
so yep.
So tell us where you went to college.
I went to UNCG, and my brother went to NC State, and he student taught at High Point School, and so he was visiting me one day in the cafeteria at UNCG, and saw my now husband Barry Snyder and introduced us, and so that's how I met him, and eventually we started dating, and now we've been married 50, it'll be 50 years in December.
So mom and dad met at UNCG. That stands for University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And yeah, they met in the school cafeteria, which I think is precious. Which is also where my brother, isn't that where,
Hmm.
okay, my brother, her son, Gabriel, where he and his wife met as well, Audrey. So Gabriel is his name, Audrey's her name. They both met at the school cafeteria at Campbell University, which is also in North Carolina. And both of them are now attorneys. Can you believe that? Very proud of both of them. So let's get on to that then. So we talked about where you grew up, how you met dad. Now tell us, talking about Gabe, tell us how many children you had have.
Okay, so I had two that were born in New York City. We lived in New York City for 5 years.
How did you get to New York City?
Well, my um, husband and I married his second year of law school. And I had been in the Philippines and I came back and
What were you doing in the Philippines?
I was teaching at a school for missionaries' children. So I taught art K through middle school and high school. So, but came back and taught in Durham County in elementary school. And we were married there. But anyway, they interviewed the Brooklyn DA's office, interviewed at UNC Chapel Hill, and Barry got the job. And so we packed up and moved to New York City and lived there 5 years. He was a assistant district attorney, and eventually got worked his way to the homicide bureau, which is quite a feat.
That is quite a feat. And dad was also from the kind of country area that mom's from as well. So it was very unique situation. How long had y'all been married before you moved to New York?
I want to say 2 years or a year and a half, because we moved in 77 and we got married in 75.
Wow. So just think about the obstacles that they went through as newlyweds. So you were saying you had your first two children in New York.
Mhm.
So let's talk about them. What are their names?
Okay, Benjamin was our firstborn, and he was about 2.5 when we moved, and my daughter Lydia was only a month old when we moved. And I had just graduated. I got my master's at Columbia University, and I had just received my diploma the May of 82, and then we moved here right after.
So Benji and Lydia were born in New York.
They both were born at New York University Hospital, and I was halfway through my master's when I got pregnant with Ben, and I just definitely wanted to finish and do it, but
So isn't my mom incredible? So she's a wife, then she got pregnant, so she's now being a mother, and then she also felt led to go get her master's degree at Columbia University. So she was just juggling all these things. So uh,
and also I taught. I worked 1 year at the Museum of Modern Art, and I taught at a Lutheran school for a year. I taught fourth grade. So that's when I got pregnant, was when I was teaching there. So then after that, I subbed a little bit, but um, it really helped to um, balance with getting a master's. I took my time getting the master's. I didn't rush it because I was working full time. But
so I feel like you're telling us this right now, and like we're going over facts, but what do you remember? I know it was a long time ago, but what do you remember about that time? Like, I'm just assuming you were scared. And because you were in an unfamiliar place, you had never even been to New York, had you?
when I was a 5-year-old, I'd gone with my family to see a Billy Graham crusade. Um, but I was 5, so that's the only time I had been.
Hmm.
And yes, I was scared. I was not a city girl, grew up in the country, but I love the city. When I got there, I loved the busyness and the energy of the city, and my husband did too. But it was absolutely scary, and my Southern upbringing um, was constantly shocked by kind of um,
Homeless men on the subway train and
that
like,
and just the coarseness of people. It was kind of people were very, very abrupt, but it was a rough, now I know it was a rough time. It was in the late 70s and early 80s. It turns out that was a rough time in New York City. So we didn't know that. But
hmm.
anyway, people were pretty curt and rude, what I call rude. But we always found wonderful, wonderful New Yorkers intermingled with all that. But that was a shock to me and an adjustment, difficult adjustment.
Do you feel like they're rude now? Or do you feel like you just understand the way they are?
I think they're less rude than they were then. I think it was a
Hmm.
hard time in New York City, and I think that's just kind of what um, the environment was, the culture was
Mm.
that way. And I know as an art teacher, I always teach that artists produce out of their culture. And that was just a very, very rough time in New York City. And so I think the people that live there were just, it kind of made them grumpy and unfriendly. But and I found myself doing the same thing. I found myself getting kind of grumpy and unfriendly because it was tough. It was a very tough
Hmm.
time. There were gangs kind of went rapid, and you saw one of the things that drove me crazy was the subway cars. They'd have a brand new subway car, and then they would put graffiti all over it. And I was like, oh my God, it just was depressing to me that the city couldn't control
Something
even.
nice.
hmm that really bothered me. And
Mm. So I had the question ready and then I started thinking about graffiti in the subway. It'll come back to me. Oh,
sorry.
I wanted to dive deeper into, I've actually never asked you this. Are When you found out you were pregnant with Ben, did you go to the doctor regularly and have your checkup, like your prenatal care and like get a sonogram done and
Yes,
every
very
month?
diligent about, I don't remember now, but whatever was expected of you at that stage, yes. And I sought out and asked advice about, I wanted it to be as natural as possible, and I wanted my child to be um, protected as much as possible. So I watched what I ate. I remember I ate so much tuna and then find out, canned tuna's probably got problems to it.
Mercury or
But
something.
I thought that was healthy and and anyway, I was I found a Lamaze class that was going to be natural. I didn't want drugs when I had, but you've still got to struggle with your doctor. My doctor was not as much inclined toward the natural, but
Why not?
she just didn't believe in it. She believed that, in fact, the culture back then was to just have C-sections. And
Mm,
doctors liked that because they had more control. They'd
hmm.
schedule it, and that was it. So for Ben, they went on and scheduled a C-section. She actually scheduled it on Thanksgiving Day, and my parents flew up to be with us for the baby being born. And I remember getting them to walk with me for blocks. We would walk to Bay Ridge, if you've ever watched Blue Bloods and see
Yeah.
where they eat. That's where we would walk all the way to the bay and all the way back, which was several blocks. So because I had heard that would help stimulate, and get you to go into contractions. And I did not have to have the C-section. I did have the labor earlier. So
Hmm.
um, I'm grateful for that. But yeah, the doctor was not, and most doctors back then weren't. They didn't want you breastfeeding. That they thought that was wrong. It wasn't.
They thought breastfeeding was wrong.
Yes, they totally did not like breastfeeding, and I had to fight to do it
Why did you want to fight? Why did you want to fight to do it?
because I knew that the natural way that God made us with breast milk was the best thing for, and I had researched it too, but it is the best thing for the baby. Now, if you can't, you can't. That's fine, but at least try it. But they just, they started pushing formula. This was New York University Hospital is, but I think it was pretty prevalent, here in North Carolina and there in New. I think that was just the thing back then.
It was like a country thing. It wasn't just like a New York thing.
Yeah, it was a country thing.
Hmm.
So by the time Lydia was born, 2.5 years later, um, I remember they weren't that way. It wasn't as much about, they embraced more the breastfeeding.
So then they went the opposite direction.
Yeah, but I know it was gradual. When
Mm.
you were born,
They were like,
3 years after that, in 85, right? 85.
yeah,
Um,
now everybody knows how old I am.
yeah. Um, it they were completely the opposite side, and that's probably why you said it. They flipped flopped. And even though you were born in North Carolina, I feel like that was true in New York as well. But Lydia, it was just gradual. They weren't as obsessed about you not breastfeeding.
But by the
Two and
time
a half.
I came along, they were like, no,
No, you should not use formula. You should breastfeed. And
you should breastfeed.
yeah, it
Yeah,
even
that's
hurt.
crazy.
It hurt women's feelings because they had trouble breastfeeding, and then they were like, "What kind of mother are you?" I mean, it was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's something that we talk about a lot on this channel is the mom guilt and the shame. It seems to be a recurring pattern and thing that I hear from patients as a physical therapy student is I hear the phrase, I feel bad. I'll ask them, why are you doing that? And they'll say, well, I feel bad. And mom guilt's real. And I have heard just nightmare stories from some of my closest girlfriends about the issues that they had with breastfeeding their children. I don't have any children, but I think I'm the only one in my friend group that doesn't, or yeah, that doesn't have kids. So I hear it though from them. And the very popular scenario is that it either hurts them or the baby won't latch, or maybe you have similar, if you've struggled with similar things, that's really common, at least in my little friend group. Like it's been, and there's two of my female friends that I'm thinking of specifically, like they're my close friends that, I mean, there was tears shed over it. Like they thought they were a terrible mother because they couldn't breastfeed and they tried. And I'm just sitting here from someone who's never been pregnant. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I'm just looking at like that's crazy. Like what the heck? Like if you can't, you can't. Like it's okay. But I would just, stand from afar as a friend and just try to be there to support them. But in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that she's being so hard on herself. I just don't get it. So if that's for whatever that's worth. So getting back to, let's see, we talked about Lydia. Did you have the same doctor with Lydia as you did with Ben?
No, no. Dr. Selinger was Ben's doctor, a female doctor, and then with Lydia I had a male doctor, and Dr. Weiner, I believe his name was, and a little bit different philosophy. He was just kind of your doctor's doctor, but much more open to the natural. He allowed me to do what I wanted to do.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
With
and
Lydia.
with Lydia.
What did you do differently with Lydia that you didn't do with Ben?
Well, the first with Ben, I just did it because I wanted to. I knew it was right, and I did it anyway, even though the doctor didn't encourage it.
Rebel.
And then, because this is my baby, my body, and I'm gonna, and even
Yeah,
though I'm in New York City and everybody's telling me what to do, I'm sorry. This is
good job.
this is forever. I'm having a baby forever, that. And so Lydia, the only thing he did that was, as it turns out, which I really had no control over, but he did use a suction to get her out. Being they used forceps to get him out, my pelvic structure is not conducive for birth. It kind of goes in instead of out, kind of in instead of out,
Hmm.
more like a pelvis usually. And so that made it more difficult to deliver a vaginal delivery. So, like I say, Ben, they use forceps to kind of encourage and get him out. And Lydia, uh,
Hmm.
she was 9 pounds and 9 ounces. And so, he used a suction to kind of get her down. Now they know um that's kind of risky to do that, and they have there's some research that could cause learning differences, and she did wind up having learning differences. So
Oh,
I
that's
I
crazy.
wondered if that I always wondered if that was part of it, but it's one of those things that he just chose not to use forceps, instead to use the suction. But that was a thing back then. And that's the thing you've got to realize. And I thought of that when you were talking about breastfeeding. When my mother had birth to me and my siblings, same thing. They did not like breastfeeding.
Hmm.
And I think she only breastfed Gary, who's
Hmm.
her third born. But
Hmm.
everybody else she didn't, because that was kind of what they encouraged, was formula.
Hmm.
So I just want to encourage everybody that, there's all these different philosophies, and you just look at all of the people, and they survived the formula. They
Hmm.
survived the breastfeed. You know what I mean? It's like,
So what advice would you give to women listening if they're in a dilemma where they're hearing this from this person and this from this person and you think all of it's good, but you just don't know what to do? What advice would you give to them?
I would give them advice to not stress about it, to do as much as they can to do what after they research it, figure it out, ask your friends, look it up with good, legit sources,
Mm,
and make sure it's not just, somebody's opinion, but look up the, statistics on what would work better. But in the end, don't stress about it. If you try it and it doesn't, it's really becoming, and I've had friends that, they got infections on their breast, and they worked through it and they did it, but they didn't keep doing it because it became more painful, and they realized it was just better to just kind of gradually go more to the formula. And so
mm.
I just encourage you not to stress about it, but to research it, do what's best. But then if it just isn't working out, then look at all the people that didn't do whatever else there is. And
So I want to quote a quote that I read in a book. It's a very famous book. It's called Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. You might have read it or heard of it. And this individual had said in there, he had written out his what's called constitution and like what his baseline is, his mission in life, so that when these hard decisions come up, he refers back to that constitution. And one of the things that he has is in there is do not be afraid of making mistakes. And
That's good.
there was a follow-up with that, and I'm gonna butcher that, but it was something to the effect of what you should be afraid of is withdrawing from a creative solution or a creative response. So, in other words, it's worse if you just don't move forward and because you're afraid of making a mistake, um, make mistakes, make mistakes. And I think that's what mom's trying to say is
Mhm.
don't stress. In other words, you're not going to be perfect. We're not going to always make the right decisions. So avoid that downward spiral negative thinking where it's cognitive distortion, where you're thinking to yourself, gosh, like if only I had it done this, or if only I would have done this. But in reality, you made the decision as best you could at the time. And so forgive yourself for not knowing what you know now then because you were human beings. It's the human and what it is just it's just the human condition. It's all of us are like that. So good advice, mom. So don't stress.
Mhm.
Make a decision, be purposeful and intentional, and do it with confidence. That way, when you make a mistake, be like, okay, well, I was wrong. So where do we go from here? What do I do? And use that creative outlet and figure out where to go next. Just never stop, never quit. So let's see. So we were talking about Lydia and in New York. And so tell us, what was it like after you delivered Lydia in New York City? What was that like?
Um, she was only, let's see, she was born April 4th, 1982,
Hmm.
and the first weekend in May is when I graduated and walked. So I see pictures
That's
of
crazy.
me, yeah, and we had these wonderful babysitters. It was sisters, but we got one of them to come up and because it's Upper Manhattan and we lived in Brooklyn, and so anyway, they came up and babysat Benjamin and Lydia, and so she was only a month old. But I look at pictures of me, and I do look kind of you know, kind of uh, I've just had a baby, and I mean, you know, I've got color in my cheeks, but I'm just like that was kind of obvious to me in the pictures that
Like what in what way are you talking about?
I looked kind of ragged, I think.
Like
I'll
you
have
had
to show
just
you
been
the
through
pictures.
something.
Yeah. And yeah, I just looked. Of course, back then it was the 782, so things were very, very casual back then as far as clothing, the style. And so some of the style that I wore, you would think, graduation, you dress up, but part of that was just the style at the time and being an art student. But
Hmm.
so that made me look a little more, you know, like I had been through the meal, as they say.
How did you feel after at that time of what you're
It
saying?
felt great. I did not feel like I looked ragged. That's why I was kind of surprised, but
Oh,
I was excited and glad, and it was just a lot of people. I remember just feeling kind of scared because we finished the graduation and I forgot to organize where Barry would be, my husband, and he had to sit somewhere else, of course, and trying to find him and then find the baby, get back to the babysitter and the two babies. So, and
that's
then I
insane.
know, and I had to return. You borrowed the gown that you wore, the graduation gown, so I had to return that, at a certain place. So anyway, I was stressed about it, and I remember standing up on some structure to look for Barry and find him in the crowd, and I miraculously found him. It was crazy.
Good job, Dad.
That was scary.
Shout
Yeah,
out.
I prayed. I said, Lord, please help me find Barry. And I'm sure he was praying too, but
That's insane. So
yeah.
that was in that's Washington Heights
It
where
was is that where Columbia is on 100 and 17th Street, I believe.
mm,
It's on um
yeah, I think it's in near Washington Heights.
is that
I
okay?
think
So I don't know.
like northern Manhattan, right?
Yes, it's northern
So I think
Manhattan and
so.
it's just south of Harlem.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Because
and that's
Harlem's
in the
way up there.
20s,
Hmm.
and I think it was 117th Street,
Mm.
115th, something like that. So um
I want to talk. just really quick about something Mom was talking about before about how the doctor used the forceps with Ben, right? And
Hmm.
then the suction for with Lydia to get her out. I think that's so interesting because so I lived in New York City for a total of 7 years, and my first time going there, I did an internship with a pro-life group, and I was actually more pro-choice at the time. I know that sounds terrible, but I was very uneducated on the matter and ignorant, for lack of better words. So when I took the internship, I didn't really know what was going to happen or what I was going to do, but they showed us an abortion a video of an actual abortion being done, and I was mortified. I just and one of the tools that they used for this particular one was suction,
Yeah.
and it was I just remember thinking the word evil kept coming over my head. Evil, evil. Like I felt the presence of evil. And I remember thinking there's nothing about this act that has life in it. It's sucking life
Mm.
out, literally. And it was only 5 minutes. It was very quick, but
Mm.
I bawled. I bawled my little eyes out and took the 6 train home in the Bronx and was just devastated. And that changed me. And then the next year and a half I was a counselor at the crisis pregnancy center for the place that I was interning with. And so it really is interesting. And the reason I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is that those two tools, the suctioning and the forceps, those were what I learned in that video were to be performed for an abortion.
Mhm.
So I don't really know why they use that for Lydia and Ben,
Because the
but
babies are having trouble coming down the birth canal.
mm,
And so it's encouraging them. And I remember when Gabriel was born, my fourth born here in Greensboro, um, he was already, the doctor was ready for him to be born. He had his everything out. He uncovered the sterilized tools. He was ready to have it, and he just didn't come down the birth canal. And
mm,
Barry turned to him and said, other doctors have used other, like forceps or something to help the baby come down the birth canal.
hmm
And the doctor turned to Barry and said, no, he's not close enough for me to grab him. He's not, so
That's crazy.
what they're trying to do is just, they're already there. They're just kind of pulling him a little bit. And so it's a tug.
Mm,
And I think the suction, the reason it was suspicious later, and I don't know if they use it anymore, is that you're putting it on the brain, you're putting it on the head, whereas forceps go on either side and you're kind of pulling it. But the
mm.
suction's right at the top of the head, and it's just like you're just trying to suck, get
That sounds like a terrible idea.
well, you're thinking just a little encouragement, just a little, that's what you're thinking, but
Yeah,
she
but
wound
it's
up
like a
being,
fetus.
yeah.
I'm not a doctor yet, but by December I will be.
Mhm.
Not a medical doctor, a doctor of physical therapy. Okay. But getting back to tell us what happened after you gave birth to Lydia and you wanted to just hold her.
Yes.
Were you
And
able to hold
so
her?
there again, there was a prejudice. So with Ben, they really wanted to you not to breastfeed, right? And they kept pushing for formula. Lydia, I wanted to have the baby as much as possible. And like I just wanted the baby to be there with me in the room the whole time, day and night. And no, you can't do that, but you can have them during the day, and they called it rooming in, but they forced you to stay in a ward. So there were like 8 people in this room all together because we wanted to have our baby with us. Other people had a private room or a semi-private room, but they didn't get their baby, but just to feed them, I guess.
That's wild.
And I wanted to be with the baby the whole time, as much of the time as I could. And I got, maybe not at night so I can sleep. That makes sense. But anyway, they just kept bringing me, and I would be the last one to get my baby, when they would go to the 8 people, and I would be the first one that got the baby taken away. So I said, this is ridiculous. And I stayed 24 hours and then I took Lydia home. And my mom was like, I didn't know you were coming home so soon. And I go, well, she checked out. Of course, you can't just leave. The pediatrician has to check out your baby, make sure they're okay, everything's okay, and checks off the
Hmm.
list. And then I have to be okay. And so I checked off. So I just gotta, even though my insurance paid for, I don't know, 3 days, I think, or 4 days, I left. Now, when Ben was born, the insurance paid for like, it was like a week or so. It was a long time.
Did you
That
stay as long for Ben?
I did because I had severe hemorrhoids with him. And so I did stay
Hmm.
um the full time.
Okay.
But whatever it was, a week. And I don't remember then, um, same thing. They just didn't bring him to me very much. And he got jaundice, if you've ever, any of your kids have ever had that. So they or what they were suspicious was jaundice. So they wanted to keep him under the lights, but they discharged me. And what I did, we rented a hotel because this is in Lower Manhattan and we lived in Brooklyn. So we rented a hotel close by. It was a really nice hotel. I got to bathe and get clean and, much better than the hospital. Come back and I was considered unclean and they didn't want me to breastfeed him.
Why?
They thought because I had left the hospital and come
Oh,
back. So they had fed him formula and of course
man.
my breasts were getting engorged. They were, they needed to breastfeed. And so I had to use a pump and there was something about that, saving the milk. They didn't like that. They didn't feel like that was clean. Such a weird concept of what's healthy and good, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that because of that experience, I wanted with Lydia,
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm just going to take this baby and leave because I
Hmm.
knew what can happen.
Yeah.
So we did have to come back. She got yellow, a
She got
little yellow,
jaundice?
yeah. And I at home. So they told me first to put her in the sun. I remember at my apartment putting her in the sun, but then it got pretty bad. So we drove back and it actually snowed. And because this is April 4th, she was born.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we looked it up on the internet and there was a surprise shock and it was like several inches. It wasn't just an inch snow. And I remember because we go back to take her to get under the lights for the jaundice, and we had trouble parking because of the snow was so deep.
Oh my
They
gosh.
had plowed and so we had to find parking. But now it's so vivid in my mind because you don't remember everything, but that was just so unusual. And they say that on the internet. They say that was an unusual snowstorm.
April 4th, it snowed in New York. That's
But it was
crazy.
actually after April 4th
Oh,
because
right.
it didn't snow on the 4th and then we go home and come back a
Exactly.
few days later. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think that's fascinating.
And by the way, when she said earlier they lived in Brooklyn but the hospital was in Lower Manhattan, just to give you like a map view of that. So if like this is Lower Manhattan right here, Brooklyn would be like right here. But the thing is, excuse me, Manhattan is an island. So even though Brooklyn's like right here, how did y'all?
Well, that's a good point. You had to go across the Brooklyn Bridge. So
That's
that
right.
everybody knows the Brooklyn Bridge. So that was my fear with both my pregnancies that I would get stuck on the Brooklyn
Oh
Bridge
yeah.
when I was in labor.
Yeah.
But thank the Lord, they both came in the middle of the night, so it wasn't crowded because the Brooklyn Bridge always was bumper to bumper. It was very slow going, and
It's not like that now, but
yeah,
yeah,
but that was so that's what you had that Brooklyn Bridge thing. It
mm,
was near the hospital, is kind of near, isn't it near the UN or not?
I have no idea.
Anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
good description.
nice. So, anything else you want to say about New York and or Lydia and Ben before we move on to yours truly?
That I can think of.
Okay. Well,